Hello and welcome to another video. Yes, I'm walking down the middle of a railway line. And yes, there's a train at the station in front of me. But don't worry, I'm not likely to get arrested or mown down or anything else, because this is Yasuno Station, and it closed in 2003. The train was left here after the final service. Yasuno Station was on the Kabe Line, which now goes only as far as Akikameyama, which is in the north of Hiroshima city. Until 2003 though, it went all the way to Sandankyo, a gorge in the north of Hiroshima prefecture, famous for its autumn leaves. Yasuno Station was on the unelectrified section between Kabe and Sandankyo. After the closure of the line on the 30th of November 2003, the station area became Yasuno Hana no Eki Koen, which translates to Yasuno Flower Station Park. The area is really beautiful in spring, when the cherry blossoms are out. Yasuno Station, and in fact the whole of the Kabe Line north of Kabe, had a relatively short life. The section of the line from Nuno to Kake, which includes Yasuno, was opened on March the 30th, 1954. The final section, from Kake to Sandankyo, was opened on July 27th, 1969. Interestingly, a year earlier than this, on September 4th, 1968, the line had been included in a list of 83 loss-making lines in Japan and recommended for abolition. The line was originally intended to link Hiroshima with Hamada on the Japan Sea coast, and despite the threat of closure, work began in 1974 on the section between Sandankyo and Hamada. This work was finally halted, though, in 1980. It's true that the northern section of the line, especially the section from Kake to Sandankyo, was fairly lightly used. Except, that is, during the autumn leaf season, when the trains were absolutely packed. If I remember correctly, there were even extra services laid on from Hiroshima. Anyway, the line north of Kabe was finally closed in 2003, after a long fight to try and save it. In the end, there were only 5 services a day to Sandankyo. Looking at the passenger numbers for some of the intermediate stations though, Yasuno included, it seems that the line, as far as Kake, that is, was relatively well used. For example, the figure for Yasuno for 2002 was 39 people a day. I assume that most of these people were commuting to Kake or Kabe, either for work or for school. 39 people a day is, of course, a small number, but it's significantly higher than some of the stations on the Kabe Line now. I think I may have mentioned in a previous video, or several previous videos in fact, that the Kabe Line itself is currently under the threat of closure, at least in parts. The geography of the line, running as it does through mountainous areas and following the winding course of the Ota River, was what doomed it in the end. I travelled to Sandankyo several times while the line was still open, and the journey certainly wasn't fast. From Hiroshima, it took about 2¼ hours. But on the other hand, the fact that the line served the local communities in the mountainous region to the north of Hiroshima was probably a factor in why the passenger numbers on the line were relatively high. Put simply, there was no other public transport option. This was certainly a factor in why the Sanko line, another line running through the mountains in the north of Hiroshima Prefecture, lasted so long, all the way until March 31st, 2018. Anyway, back to Yasuno. The station building is a fairly substantial one, with a waiting room and space for staff. The station lost its staff in 1965 though, just 10 years after opening. The whole line, really, seems to have been built with scant regard to finances and practical realities. Villages like Yasuno could never have needed stations like they got, and surely it should have been possible to predict that passenger numbers would decline just a decade after opening. But let me say it again. Even after the recommendation for closure of the line, work still progressed on the extension to Hamada. Seen from a modern point of view, this boggles the mind. Anyway, the station still survives largely intact, even down to the seats on the platform. The single carriage left at the station is part of a Kiha 58 diesel multiple unit, which worked the very final service from Kabe to Sandankyo. Having been left here at the station for very nearly 20 years though, the lack of care given to it is starting to show now. On the Hiroshima side of the station, the line remains for a short distance. And just a little further on, the bridge over the Ota River also still remains. Looking out of the bus on the way to Yasuno, much of the trackbed, if not the track itself, seems to still exist. It's almost as if the possibility of reopening the line in the future was borne in mind, although that's probably just my wishful thinking. On the Sandankyo side of Yasuno Station, there's no track left, although it is possible to walk along the trackbed for a short while, which I did. Yasuno village is situated by the side of the Ota River, with most of the settlement sandwiched between the railway and the river. I found a path that looked like it would lead down to the river, so I followed it. And when I did, this was the scene that greeted me. It was so beautiful and so peaceful. Just as I got to the river, the wind got up and was quite strong. But nevertheless, I sat on a rock by the river and had a picnic, albeit a rather windy picnic. Thinking about it, I'm sure that there are factors that I don't know, which led to the closure of the line. Although I'm equally sure that the primary cause for that closure was the lack of passengers. My iPad tells me that it's possible to drive from Hiroshima Station to Sandankyo in 1 hour and 5 minutes. So 2.25 hours by train is obviously way longer than driving. Given this, I suppose it's no wonder really that there weren't that many passengers. Rural depopulation in the north of Hiroshima Prefecture is sure to have been a factor too. Still, I remember how beautiful the view from the train was. And I can't help thinking that if just a bit more effort had been made to attract visitors to the line, that may just have tipped the balance from closure to survival. The Kabe Line north of Kabe was never likely to be viable just serving the population along the line. And to be honest, this is increasingly becoming the case with lines like the Kabe Line now. But by supplementing local passengers with tourists, using special trains and timetables designed for tourism, then there might just be a case for keeping such lines open. Still, the Kabe Line is part of history now, no matter how regretful that might be. Only places like Yasuno exist to remind us of how things used to be. And even then, really only for those of us who remember the line when it was still running. I just hope that people who live along other lightly used lines realise what they have before it's too late. Anyway, that's about it for this video, I think. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you enjoyed this brief visit to Yasuno. If you did enjoy the video, please do leave a comment or a thumbs up, and I hope to see you again in another video very soon. Thanks again for watching, and bye for now.